Hey, how's it going, Professor Bolus? This is Miguel Garcia, and I'll be doing my visual monograph on Dunkirk. Dunkirk is a 2017 war film written, produced, and directed by Christopher Nolan, based on the actual Dunkirk evacuation of the Second World War. In this video, I will break down how the film reflects aspects of its society and culture in which it was created, and I'll also be examining the film's use of its fundamentals such as structure, cinematography, editing, production design, and sound. I chose Dunkirk because I remembered while watching it in theaters, I became really curious in how a movie like this was made. I wanted to dive in and explore those fundamentals and see how this movie transpired. It's hard to explain my infatuation with this film, but I just know when I was watching it, I thought, whatever the director was trying to do, it totally worked. The real-life Dunkirk evacuation took place May 26 to June 4th, 1940. The evacuation was a last-minute rescue of thousands of Allied soldiers, mainly British and French, who were trapped by Nazis near the beaches of Dunkirk, France. At a time of desperation, many British civilians risked their own lives to aid the troops on the beach by setting sail on their own personal boats to transport the soldiers across the English Channel and back to Britain. This was a major achievement for the Allies, as it denied the opportunity for the German forces to defeat the British Army. In true epic proportions, the film's structure to tell the story from three different perspectives. A structure designed to present the battle's land, sea, and air dynamics. The time periods each element consisted of were different, however, as it were in real life. Those stuck on the beach, where the mole was, sometimes waited up to a week to be rescued. It took a day for the boats to cross the English Channel, and in the air, find Dunkirk, the British Spitfires would carry just an hour worth of fuel. The film cuts and goes back and forth to three different timelines for the majority of the film. We as the audience get to witness some events from multiple point of view, such as this scene where a boat carrying soldiers gets bombed. Again, these scenes all take place at a different point of the film. With each particular cut, the focus shifts between different characters in their own timeline, who themselves make impactful decisions for the sake of survival or protection of others. That's why this film doesn't really have room for wasteful scenes. Everything that happens on screen matters greatly. In an interview about the film, Christopher Nolan explains, "It's all about point of view. I wanted to create a subjective experience for the audience." It's necessary to divide the point of view into three different strands. So with each strand, you're telling the story intensively, subjectively, and you're really trying to only see and know what those characters would see and what they know. Nolan purposely chose to only include the focal and foremost storylines of Dunkirk, leaving out any behind-the-curtains events, such as a perspective from a general's office, where everyone's scrambling and looking at maps, and focuses on the first-hand responders and the valiant soldiers who build up a coherent picture of the larger events of Dunkirk. It's not until the end of the film where all three timelines converge to what represents the boiling point of each timeline's cumulative chaos and journey. This non-linear compression of time allowed the story to be compounded, intensifying the impact that each of the three story arcs had to produce the best possible movie experience. When looking at Christopher Nolan's track record of aesthetically pleasing shots and mesmerizing cinematography and production design in films like Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, and Interstellar, it's difficult to imagine that he wouldn't pull out all the stops to ensure Dunkirk will become an all-time cinematography classic, especially since the film wasn't all that dialogue heavy. There wasn't a lot of talking, but the cinematography told the story. Along with his trusted director of photography, Hoyt Van Hoytma, Christopher Nolan wanted the audience to be as immersed into the film as possible and feel as they were there with the soldiers, physically, and experience everything firsthand. Dunkirk was one of the highest resolution Hollywood movies ever shown to audience theatrically. 70% of the movie was shot in IMAX film. The rest was shot on 65mm film. Nolan said that he wanted the film to be the closest thing to virtual reality without goggles. They pushed their boundaries and set out to capture the best looking images. They engineered special lenses and rigs that would meet their standards, such as new lenses that would pan and tilt, snorkel lenses to get into tight spaces, and extra light sensitive lenses that would allow for tight close-ups. Camera movement was key. Nolan wanted the camera to follow the action. Every shot served the purpose. Describing the cinematography, Van Hoytma says that you could compare it to a documentary where you're always a little bit behind the action. You're not waiting there for the bomb to hit. You pan onto it as it happens. We try it as much as possible to give the first-hand experience. Over-the-shoulder shots are used frequently to provide a point-of-view shots to immerse the audience and have them witness the same things the way the characters do. An actual IMAX camera was used to film aero shots. It would be attached to the wing to get the perfect shot of the pilot flying in real time, even in multiple angles. Set in 1940 wartime, production design played a big factor in the film's credibility and the audience engagement. After first-hand accounts of the evacuation revealed how young and inexperienced the soldiers had been, Nolan decided to cast young and unknown actors for the film. Production designer Nathan Crowley was charged with the task of making Dunkirk appear not only historically accurate, but as the work of art that Christopher Nolan envisioned. Crowley was tasked to recreate the historic mole, the extremely narrow pier extending a kilometer out to sea. They had to have real ships, real Spitfire planes, because the goal was to use as little CGI as possible. Most of the costumes and production design's goal was to achieve a brown or teal look to the film, with a lot of muted colors to recreate the somber ambiance. This generated a sense of unity of the soldiers, acknowledging that everyone was on the same team and had the same mission to return home. The film looks real, and it's that authenticity that makes it easy for the audience to immerse themselves into this World War II journey. You can see how a film with this unusual structure, different camera resolutions, intense camera work, and powerful sound was a challenge in post-production. Lee Smith, Nolan's longtime film editor, describes Dunkirk as a visceral experience rather than a spoken narrative, an art film disguised as a blockbuster. With very little dialogue and 3 different story arcs all happening at a different pace, Smith had his work cut out for him. Smith admitted that weaving timelines together that intersected at various parts in the film was a very intricate job. A lot of time was spent perfecting where the editors moved from land to sea to the air. When asked about how he augmented the tension through editing, Smith responded, "This film was obviously a much more visual film, so a lot of the tension was in how long you would hold a shot to start to feel that. The soldiers were exposed, or just the general vibe of being left alone or arriving back at the beach when you thought you were saved, but now you're not." Smith and Nolan would watch footage every night. According to Nolan, there were 1,000 ways to cut a scene, but only one of those ways was right. On this subject, Smith explains, "I like to say that it was all easy and we did it right, but it was a very detailed and complicated thing to get to the final product. In the end, Dunkirk's editing was phenomenal and played a huge part in keeping the audience engaged."
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
Sound mixing and sound design in Dunkirk were to many people the show stealer. Audience members commended how immersed they felt with how the movie sounded. The most important factor was that everything sounded realistic. Bombs were loud, jet engines were petrifying. The score was what really set this film apart in terms of creating an intense feeling and garnering a spine-chilling reaction. Decorated composer Hans Zimmer, who worked with Nolan countless times in the past with films like Interstellar, Inception, and the Dark Knight series, returned to compose the original score for Dunkirk. And when asked about his work for the film and the sound vision he and Nolan had, he had this to say.
It's like, it's just full on. But it was Chris's, vision of, and vision is a weird word in this case because, vision is the eyes, and what all we try to do is actually figure out how we can go and use our ears as much as our eyes in this film. And so I think part of the reactions I've been getting, which I love, is that we sort of sneaked up and got a little closer of really truly making it a whole and making it one experience. And the sound and the music and the visuals are of one storytelling experience. Does that make sense?
Dunkirk is a war movie with themes of survival, nationalism, sacrifice, heroism, fear, and honor, which all tie back to what I believe the same message of the film, war. War is hell. We get to see war for what it is. As we follow the point of views of British soldiers trapped on the beach, we feel the suspense of their not knowing whether they will return home alive, and their fear of the next torpedo or bomb that might be used against them. Dunkirk is a beautifully shot and epic film, but it is not romanticized war. Instead, it exemplifies that war is indeed hell, and to survive war, every bit of help counts. There are no individuals, there are no egos. There's just unity and hope. How does this affect today's society? Well, I feel like there's a lot of battles being fought today. The battle against poverty, the battle against climate change, racism, inequality, to say a few. And although these battles seem unwinnable and a lot of people are willing to give up, it's important that we all stand together and never lose hope in each other. Like the protagonist Dunkirk, we all have a job to do in order to not only better our world, but also save it and do our part. Dunkirk currently sits with a 92% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 94% on Metacritic, and for many reasons. Dunkirk received praise for its screenplay, direction, musical score, and cinematography. Some critics called it Nolan's best film to date and one of the greatest war films ever made. It has a total of 163 nominations in numerous award associations, and in the 2018 Academy Awards, it was nominated for the Best Picture, Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Original Score, Best Production Design, and actually won 3 Oscars for the Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing.